Hello. Recently I did a survey and there were lots and lots of answers to the question about the Secondo Passaggio and how to navigate it. And I'm going to do a short video series. Now these are on YouTube, but they're not searchable and they're not cataloged in the normal channel. So you as newsletter subscribers get to see them, you get the links and get to watch them. You can certainly share them with your friends if you wish, but I'm only sending these notifications and these video links specifically to you for being on the newsletter. So, the Secondo Passaggio came up more than I would have expected, which is, what is the Secondo Passaggio? The question that wasn't including that is, why do we care? And so I want to talk about those two things a little bit here today and show you what the Secondo Passaggio is, show you why it's important to us to understand it and to know how to navigate it, and then we'll go on from there. So the Secondo Passaggio, and you know, it's interesting, in my own teaching I realize I focus quite specifically on the Secondo Passaggio. However, the Zona di Passaggio is perhaps more germane to the overall process of singing smoothly over the Secondo Passaggio than specifically the Secondo Passaggio is. So, the Secondo Passaggio is the point at which you are definitively in your cricothyroid dominant singing voice, which is to say, that is the point at which you are definitively in your head voice. The Zona di Passaggio, however, is the span of notes where that changeover takes place. And what are we changing from? We're changing from our chest voices to our head voices, or our thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice to our cricothyroid dominant singing voice. And there are other schools of thought out there that label it differently. I believe the CVT method labels it as mode 1, like M1 and M2, if I'm not mistaken. So, why is this important to us? This is important for a variety of reasons. Because one might argue, like, well, why don't we just belt it all out? Like, just belt the high notes out. When we belt, that is a self-limiting factor, first of all. When you belt, you are committing to the heavy mechanism. You are committing to the thyroarytenoid dominant singing voice. Those are the larger muscles that are directly beneath the vocal fold, the vocalis muscles. And those muscles are only meant to vibrate so quickly depending on the structure of your larynx and the apparatus that surrounds it. All those muscles, the length of the vocal fold, those sorts of things. If we're only going to belt, we're never going to allow for the elongation of the vocal fold, then we get into problems such as having intonation issues, we get into vocal fatigue and strain, and as I started off with, it's a self-limiting factor. There's only so high that you will be able to force those muscles to go. And the higher you force it, the more strained it may sound, the more it may become quite unreliable, or you may find that you're inducing fatigue at a very, very fast rate. So learning to navigate this, even if you did choose to ultimately kind of retain more of a thyroarytenoid balance to things, you could still allow for some elongation, and that would then extend your range, and it would also mean that you would endure less, you would have less fatigue to endure less vocal strain, and you'd probably have much better intonation as well. You would certainly have better intonation. So that elongation is what the cricothyroid muscles do. They're posterior and anterior muscles at the either ends of the vocal fold. Now, in truth, they attach to some cartilage, the hyoid cartilage. And when you hear about the laryngeal tilt, that rotation, that's what's happening. So as we ascend through the Zona di Passaggio, the vocal folds elongate, and this is also where you get the thinning analogy that we're said to have to thin the vocal fold as we ascend. Well, it's that elongation that thins the vocal fold, decreases the mass, and allows it to continue to vibrate at higher frequencies without having the deleterious effects of belting. Additionally, when we do that, we can allow the vocal fold to remain closed or adducted, and that is what gives us that full range sound that is seamless across the Secondo Passaggio. In my next video, I'm going to show you my process as to how I help vocalists define their Secondo Passaggio, learn to develop reliable modes of phonation back and forth across it. In other words, so they can sing into their head voice and then out of it reliably, knowing when to expect it and then get in and out seamlessly, and how we work towards having a seamless transition across the Secondo Passaggio. If you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. You can drop them in the comments as you might normally on YouTube. Take really good care of your voices, enjoy singing. I'll see you in a couple days with this little mini sequence of videos on upper register singing.